Wait for a moment. Take a slow breath in. Hold it for a second. Now let it out because something has shifted. And if you have been sensing it too, stay with this until the very end. What you are about to hear may explain more than you expect. If one person has been appearing in your thoughts again and again without any clear reason, if their presence feels close, even when there has been no contact, if your heart keeps sensing something your mind still cannot explain, then this message may be reaching you at exactly the right moment. Something is unfolding behind the scenes, not later, not someday, right now. The person connected to your emotions is slowly losing control over what they truly feel for you, and the next step they take could reveal everything they have been trying so hard to keep hidden. On the outside, nothing seems unusual. Life keeps moving forward. Days continue to pass. The silence remains. But beneath that silence, something has been quietly growing for much longer than either of you realizes. Their thoughts keep finding their way back to you. Their emotions are becoming stronger. Their ability to keep everything locked inside is beginning to fade. And the surprising part is this: the harder they tried to create distance, the deeper they fell into the reality of this connection. So stay with me, because before this message ends, you may finally understand why your intuition has felt sharper lately, why your heart has been unusually restless, and why this connection feels like it is standing right before an important change. They tried to stay in control of everything. They tried to appear calm. They convinced themselves this was only a temporary feeling, only attraction, only curiosity, only something that time would naturally erase. But time never erased it. Instead, it stayed. It followed them into quiet evenings, into unexpected memories, into busy places where nothing should have reminded them of you, and into songs that suddenly carried a deeper meaning. Even ordinary moments began to feel different because somehow your presence kept finding its way into them. They continued living as though nothing had changed inside, but everything had already changed. That is why the energy surrounding this connection feels different now. What they once pushed down has become much harder to ignore. Every time they tried to walk away from these emotions, they somehow returned even stronger. Every time they convinced themselves to let go, something inside quietly pulled them back toward you. Little by little, what once seemed easy to manage turned into something impossible to deny. Some people enter someone's life and leave behind a memory that slowly fades. Others arrive and completely reshape another person's emotional world. That is what happened here. You were never meant to become just another passing chapter in their story. You were never meant to be someone they could easily forget. Deep inside, they already know that. And that truth has started to shape them more than they ever expected. Keep watching, because what happens next may explain the silence you have been trying to understand. From the outside, they may still appear distant. They may still pretend that everything is perfectly fine. They may continue moving carefully, hesitating, or hiding behind long periods of silence. But behind that calm appearance, there has been an emotional storm they have kept completely private. Every delayed message, every step backward, every mixed signal, every unexpected change in their behavior was never empty. It was inner conflict. It was someone experiencing real emotions without knowing how to carry them without changing the direction of their life. That is what real connection does. It asks people to become honest. It asks them to change. It asks them to leave behind old habits, old defenses, and fears they have depended on for years. That is exactly what frightened them. Moving honestly toward you would mean they could no longer hide from themselves. They would have to face everything this connection awakened inside them. They would have to admit this feels different from anything they have experienced before. They would have to let go of the version of themselves that always stayed guarded and emotionally distant. A part of them feared that once they accepted this truth, nothing inside would ever return to the way it used to be. But something has started changing. Fear is no longer holding the strongest position. Desire is becoming stronger. Missing you is becoming stronger, and staying silent is beginning to feel heavier than finally speaking the truth. When silence becomes more painful than vulnerability, people begin to move. Maybe you have already noticed small signs without fully trusting them. Their name appears in your thoughts more often than before. Memories arrive without warning. At unexpected moments during the day or even late at night, you suddenly feel their energy as though they are somehow close. The connection feels alive even without a single conversation. That is not simply your imagination. Something emotional is shifting beneath everything you can see. They are beginning to experience your absence in a much deeper way, not simply as distance but as something that feels like a real loss. And that realization changes everything, because when someone finally understands that losing you would hurt more than opening their heart, the walls they carefully built begin to weaken. What once felt safe no longer brings comfort. The distance that once protected them now feels empty. The silence that once gave them control has become difficult to carry. You are no longer someone they remember once in a while. You have become part of their emotional world in a way they cannot easily escape. One small memory can completely pull them back. One quiet moment can bring every feeling rushing to the surface. One simple pause during their day is enough to undo the emotional control they worked so hard to build. And this may only be the beginning of what is about to unfold. And if you have been feeling this pressure too, if your own intuition keeps whispering that something is changing, do not ignore it too quickly. Stay with me, because what comes next may connect many pieces you have been trying to understand. Sometimes your awareness moves ahead of visible reality. Sometimes your heart notices a shift before your eyes ever do. Something has been growing on both sides of this connection, even if neither of you could fully explain it. That is why they have seemed so unpredictable. One moment they move closer, the next they step away. One moment they seem open, the next they become quiet again. It is not because they feel nothing, it is because they feel more than they know how to carry. Emotional distance is often misunderstood. It does not always mean someone has stopped caring. Very often it means the opposite. It is deep care without clear direction, strong feelings without knowing what to do next. You did not simply enter their life as someone attractive or interesting. You reached emotional places inside them that had been silent for years. You challenged walls they believed would never fall. You made old defenses feel uncertain. You awakened honesty. You awakened hope. And hope can feel frightening for someone who has spent years expecting very little from life. At first they believed logic would help them move on. They believed enough time would make these feelings disappear. They believed distance would slowly reduce your importance. Instead, the opposite happened. Distance made your presence even clearer. Absence made your impact even stronger. Silence made your importance impossible to ignore. Now a quiet truth has started settling inside them. What they found with you cannot easily be replaced. It cannot simply be recreated with someone else. That realization becomes harder to push away every single day, because eventually the heart grows tired of running from something it already accepts. And when that emotional exhaustion reaches its limit, control begins to lose its power. Lately, they have been restless in ways they cannot fully explain. Conversations with other people no longer hold the same interest. Other relationships feel flatter than before. Everyday moments no longer reach the emotional depth they once expected. And without even noticing, they compare almost everything back to you. The feeling, the energy, the honesty, the emotional depth. Every comparison slowly weakens the walls they built around themselves. This is the stage where acceptance quietly begins. Not complete acceptance, but the kind that arrives without making noise. A thought that appears late at night. A realization that refuses to disappear. A quiet truth that keeps saying this connection is real, and pretending otherwise is becoming harder than facing it honestly. Once that point is reached, behavior starts changing before any final decision is made. Their attention becomes sharper. Their curiosity begins returning. Their emotional awareness becomes stronger. They notice your silence more than before. They feel your distance more deeply, and they begin wondering if you will always be there. Keep watching, because what happens next often surprises people, even though it has been building for much longer than anyone realizes. The next step they take may seem sudden from your point of view, but for them it will be the result of a long inner battle finally reaching its end. It could be a message, a phone call, a simple conversation carrying emotions they could never speak directly. A return that feels unexpected, even though it has been forming quietly for a long time. What truly changed everything was not only your presence, but what your presence awakened inside them. You brought emotional honesty to the surface. You awakened vulnerability. You awakened longing. You awakened reflection. Most importantly, you awakened the possibility that love could be genuine, deep, and lasting. For someone who has learned to survive by staying in control, that kind of emotional awakening changes everything. Many people build emotional distance to protect themselves. They create routines that keep others at a safe distance. They build invisible walls. They convince themselves they never need anyone too deeply. Then one real connection enters their life and quietly moves through every defense without asking permission. Suddenly, the old way of feeling safe no longer works. That is exactly what happened here. You passed through defenses they spent years building simply by being authentic. Now they cannot return to emotional numbness the way they once did. That is why their resistance became stronger for a while. It was the last form of control they believed they still had. But pretending becomes exhausting when the heart already knows the truth. And they are growing tired now. Tired of pretending everything is normal. Tired of carrying emotions they cannot explain away. Tired of acting untouched when they have actually been deeply affected. Part of them wants to move toward you. Another part still fears being completely seen. One side wants certainty before taking any risk. Another side already understands that certainty will never arrive through silence alone. That inner conflict becomes heavier with every passing day. And along with it, another feeling has quietly appeared. Regret. Not loud regret that demands attention, but a quiet awareness that fear caused delays and something meaningful may have been pushed aside for too long. They replay old moments differently now. Things they said, things they never said. Times you reached out, times they stepped back. As they reflect on everything, your place inside their emotional world becomes clearer than it has ever been before. And as that clarity grows, so does the pressure to respond. Because once someone can no longer deny what they truly feel, silence becomes harder to carry than taking action. Eventually, everything building inside has to find its way outward. They are beginning to understand that what came from you was sincere. It carried patience. It carried care. It carried emotional depth. It carried truth. Yet instead of trusting it, they fought against it. That realization changes a person. It reshapes every memory. Many people only recognize the value of something genuine after distance shows them how empty life feels without it. They are beginning to feel that emptiness now, especially during moments that should feel complete, but somehow do not. That is why the emotional pressure inside them continues to grow, not because they suddenly became weaker, but because truth carries its own weight. And once that truth becomes heavier than fear, movement is no longer something that might happen. It becomes something that eventually must happen. So if you have been sensing a quiet shift beneath everything you can see, trust that feeling. If your intuition has become stronger lately, there may be a deeper reason for it than you realize. And what comes next could reveal why this connection has never truly been as silent as it appeared. Sometimes the heart reaches a place where staying silent hurts more than finally speaking. That is the place they are slowly approaching now. And when someone arrives there after holding back for so long, they do not come back with casual emotions. They return carrying the weight of everything they almost let slip away. The thought of truly losing you has begun affecting them in a much deeper way. Not the simple thought that maybe one day things could change, but the real possibility that you may continue healing, growing, moving forward, and no longer keeping a space open for them in your heart. That possibility has brought unexpected clarity, because nothing reveals the truth faster than the fear of permanent loss. They are beginning to notice that you are changing without them. They see you learning from the past. They sense you becoming stronger in your own quiet way. Instead of making them pull away, that realization has made their feelings even stronger. It has forced them to understand something important. They are not afraid of being alone in general. They are afraid of living without you in particular. That is a completely different truth. It means your place inside their emotional world cannot easily be replaced. And once someone realizes that, resistance cannot stand the way it once did. Stay with this because the next part explains why everything feels different now. This is why their thoughts keep returning to you, why your energy keeps finding its way back into their mind, why they cannot fully disconnect no matter how hard they tried. Deep inside, their heart had already chosen long before their mind stopped arguing. Now the mind is slowly losing that battle. As those inner walls begin to fall, the next step they take will carry far more emotion than even they expect. It may not be perfect, it may feel uncertain, it may arrive after long hesitation, but it will never be empty. It will come from months of hidden longing, quiet reflection, unspoken regret, and the growing realization that every road leading away from you somehow circles back to the same truth. They are also beginning to understand what their silence has created. Silence creates space, delay creates distance, fear creates missed opportunities. Now they keep asking themselves whether everything that stretched between you can still be repaired. That question alone is making their urgency stronger every day. They are paying closer attention now, watching your energy more carefully, listening to the meaning behind your words, wondering if your heart still has room for them, wondering if they waited too long, wondering if the bridge between both of you still remains. This matters because people behave very differently once they realize they are no longer guaranteed a place in the life of someone they truly love. Their actions become more thoughtful, their energy becomes more genuine, their intentions become clearer, not because every fear suddenly disappeared, but because the old way of hiding no longer brings comfort. Silence no longer feels safe. It only brings more pain. And there is something equally important happening here. Through all the confusion, this connection has not only been changing them, it has been changing you as well. Keep watching because this part often changes the way people see the entire story. You have learned how to carry love without chasing after someone. You have learned how to survive uncertainty without losing yourself along the way. You have learned to trust what your heart feels, even when the outside world offered very little proof. You have discovered that your value never disappears simply because someone else stays silent. That growth matters more than you realize. Because if this next chapter truly begins, it will not begin from desperation or fantasy. It will begin from awareness. It will begin with two people who have both been changed by everything this connection asked them to face. Every deep connection eventually reaches a moment when resistance can no longer continue. Not because of one dramatic event, but because everything slowly builds over time. Longing grows stronger, memories become heavier, absence leaves a deeper mark. The pressure of pretending continues building until one day staying away becomes harder than risking another step closer. That is where they are now. They tried distracting themselves. They tried convincing their mind to move on. They tried living as though this connection could simply be packed away and forgotten. But every attempt slowly fell apart. And now the truth beneath all those efforts has become impossible to ignore. You were never someone who could be replaced. That realization carries its own shock, because once someone understands that what they lost cannot simply be found somewhere else, urgency quietly begins to grow. It may not always be loud, it may not always be visible, but it becomes incredibly powerful. It appears in sleepless nights. It appears in sudden moments of reflection. It appears in quiet thoughts that keep asking, what if I lose them completely? That question has been growing louder inside them, and it is changing everything. Your absence no longer feels like simple, empty space. It feels like a real emotional loss. And emotional loss has a way of bringing honesty to the surface, especially for someone who once believed there would always be another chance. Now they are beginning to see clearly that time changes people. Silence changes relationships. Hearts continue moving. Life never waits forever. If they keep delaying, they may end up watching the door quietly close on something that was always meant to be faced instead of avoided. That realization has never been stronger than it is now. So when their next step finally comes, do not expect it to feel small. It may begin with something simple, but the emotions behind it will carry real weight. It could be a message filled with more honesty than before, a conversation that reaches places it never reached in the past, a moment where they stop hiding behind distance, humor, or carefully chosen words, and finally allow their real feelings to be seen, because emotionally they are moving closer to surrender. And surrender after a long inner battle does not look like games or confusion. It looks like honesty. Even if that honesty trembles, even if the words come slowly, even if it arrives after countless moments of hesitation, it will carry truth. It will carry the weight of someone finally admitting that your absence changed them, that the distance showed them your value, that they do not want a future where you become the regret they carry for the rest of their life. That is the point they are reaching now. The most powerful part is this. They are not only moving toward you because they miss you, they are moving because they finally understand what this connection truly means. They now see that some connections are not accidental, not shallow, and not temporary. Some people enter a life to completely transform the heart. Some people awaken truths that can never be put back to sleep. You became that truth within them. So if your intuition has been quietly telling you that something important is drawing near, do not ignore it. Stay steady, stay clear, stay open without giving up your own peace. Because when someone finally stops running from what they truly feel, everything inside them begins to change. Their actions begin to change. Their eyes carry something different. Their voice sounds softer. Their energy feels different. Even the way they are present around you starts to shift. And the remarkable part is this. You may sense the difference long before a single word is spoken. Stay with me because this final part brings everything together. We have now reached the turning point, the place where everything inside them becomes clearer than it has ever been. Loving you is no longer what frightens them. The real fear is losing you. Once the fear of losing someone becomes stronger than the fear of opening the heart, people stop delaying. They stop pretending everything is fine. They stop believing there will always be more time. They begin moving toward what truly matters. That quiet urgency has been building inside them. It is stronger now than it has ever been before. They are beginning to understand that this connection was never just lucky timing. It was never simple coincidence. It was never something temporary that would naturally fade away. You entered their life to awaken something meaningful, and that is exactly what happened. You changed the way they understand love. You changed the way they experience emotional depth. You changed the way they see themselves. Because of that, life has never quite felt the same since you became part of it. A heart that has truly changed does not easily return to emotional numbness. That is why everything that comes next carries so much meaning. Keep listening because the next few moments explain why this story has reached such an important place. What comes next will not simply be emotion speaking. It will be truth rising after a long inner journey. A truth that quietly says, you matter far more than they ever wanted to admit. A truth that admits your absence reached places inside them they could no longer ignore. A truth that says, they do not want this story to become another lesson understood only after it was too late. So if you have noticed the space around this connection feeling heavier, if the silence somehow feels alive instead of empty, if your intuition continues whispering that movement is close, trust what you are sensing. Something is beginning to open. Something has been preparing itself behind the scenes and is slowly moving into the real world. When that moment finally arrives, nothing between you will feel exactly the same again. The most powerful part of this next chapter is not only that they may return, it is the growth that has taken place inside both of you. While everything remained uncertain, life was preparing you as well. You were learning how to love without begging to be chosen. You were learning how to stand confidently in your own worth, even when the outcome remained unclear. You were learning how to leave your heart open without giving away your inner peace. Those lessons matter now more than ever, because if this connection rises again, it has the chance to return in a completely different way. Stronger, wiser, more stable, more honest, more intentional. That kind of change is not built on confusion, it is built on truth. And that is exactly the energy gathering here. This is no longer about surface attraction or temporary excitement. It is becoming something much deeper. It is emotional certainty, slowly finding its voice. The kind of certainty that finally says, I cannot keep pretending this means less than it truly does. That is why there is no need to rush anything. There is no need to force answers before they naturally arrive. There is no need to chase every small sign just to quiet your thoughts. Let the truth unfold at its own pace. Let actions reveal what words once tried to hide. Let clarity appear naturally, because someone who has resisted a genuine connection for this long does not step forward without being deeply changed first. They come forward after countless moments of reflection. They come forward after carrying longing they could no longer ignore. They come forward after an emotional awakening that quietly transformed the way they see everything. When someone reaches that point and finally speaks from the heart, their words carry real weight. They are no longer protecting an image. They are revealing something honest. And honesty has a power that fear can never hold back forever. Stay with this until the very end, because one final truth remains. Deep inside, a part of you may already know it. Something is approaching, something sincere, something that has been trying to rise to the surface for much longer than you realize. Perhaps that is why your heart has felt different lately. Perhaps that is why your intuition has refused to become quiet. Stay connected to your own peace,